Thousands of years ago, he was worshipped virtually as a god. Today, he has been relegated to a few sentences in the back pages of the sports section. He pursues excellence in a sport he knows will never bring him fame or wealth. He is a gladiator in the oldest sport known to man. He is an Olympic wrestler. Mention wrestling, and in the minds of most people come images of two overweight men dressed in Halloween costumes with names usually reserved for guard dogs. Professional wrestling is pure entertainment, more closely related to the circus than to serious sport. On the other hand, amateur or Olympic wrestling is more than just sport. It is a direct descendant of one of early man's most basic and strongest instincts, survival. However, in today's society, its popularity lies somewhere between that of badminton and table tennis. To learn more about this sport, we recently went to the quiet city of Saskatoon, where along the banks of the Saskatchewan River lies the University of Saskatchewan, site of the 1983 Canadian Senior Wrestling Championships. We asked Ole Sorensen, former member of the Canadian Olympic wrestling team, to help us reveal some of the subtleties of the sport.
Amateur wrestling is controlled aggression. It's a street fight with rules. Canada's not among the strongest of nations in the wrestling world. However, we do have two athletes that rank among the very best. In the next few moments, we will see them in action. But before we do, and in order to fully appreciate their great abilities, there are a few aspects of the sport we must first understand.
The paradox of amateur wrestling is the simplicity of its objective and the complexity in achieving that objective. The objective is simple enough: capture or control your opponent. To achieve either, however, requires an intricate weaving of physical and psychological skills that is equaled in few other sports. Ironically, perhaps, wrestling can be closely paralleled to the game of chess, but where the chess player uses men on a board as his weapons to capture his opponent, the wrestler must rely on strength, speed, balance, and technique. At the uppermost levels of the sport, it is the psychological skills that make a champion. Desire, dedication, intelligence, and courage. Traditionally, the best wrestlers in the world have come from the Eastern Bloc countries, where wrestling carries a much higher profile than here in North America. Canada is ranked about 8th in the world. But currently, we have two athletes who are contenders at the highest levels of international wrestling. Rey Takahashi is 24 years old. He competed in the 1976 Olympics at the age of 17, only 3 years after starting the sport. At 19, he won a Commonwealth gold medal and is 5-time Canadian champion.
It's quite a dynamic sport, and I think that you have to be physically fit and mentally prepared, and it's quite challenging. And I like a physical type of sport where you can let your tensions go, regulated, mind you, So it is a tough sport.
The year was 1982. The location, Edmonton. The event, the World Amateur Wrestling Championships. The Eastern Bloc countries had sent their best athletes. With 10 seconds remaining in the final of the 90-kilo class, 25-year-old Clark Davis from Montreal was trailing the East German Huey Neupert by 2 points. With 5 seconds left, Davis threw the East German onto his back, and the match was tied. Then, just as the final whistle went, the East German rolled Clark onto his back. After a split second of eternity, the point and the gold medal was awarded to the East German. Though he lost by fractions of a second, Clark Davis had become the first Canadian in 50 years to win the silver medal at the World Championships. And today, at 26, he is still improving.
What do you think was the quality that made you successful from the outset? What was the factor that gave you the first wins?
Fear.
What, of losing, or?
Yeah, I think looking bad, I guess, losing, and also I think that there's probably some natural ability that was the factor in me coming up on top instead of on bottom.
Davis competes in the 90-kilo weight class and Rey Takahashi in the 52-kilo class. Besides the obvious difference, weight classes have their own distinct styles of wrestling. Ole Sorensen explains further.
There are 10 weight divisions in freestyle wrestling, starting from the biggest division called the super heavyweight. Big Bob Molly here is in that division. He weighs 240 pounds. Bob, what's the style that makes the heavyweights unique?
Well, in the super heavyweight division, there's more power and strength utilized. It's a major factor is breaking one's balance.
Tipping those big guys over and getting on top, eh? Yeah, also with us here is Ron Monker. He's a premier 114-pound wrestler. That's the second lightest division, and they move a little bit differently from the heavyweights. Ron, how do the lightweights move?
I think the lightweights are a lot quicker and more agile, and they have to utilize speed and be very flexible because the bumping and the grinding in there and the constant twisting, whereas the big guys get to push and pull a lot more, and their matches aren't quite as exciting to watch as the little guys.
What about the power factor, Ron, in the lightweights? You guys are accused of not having the same massive power that the big boys have.
Well, we might not have the muscle size, but I think we work out as hard on the weights as anybody else, and for our size, we pack a lot of power.
There they are, two of Canada's best, the lightweight 114-pound Ron Monker, super heavyweight Big Bob Molly.
The obvious advantage of the weight divisions is that virtually every man can compete on a physically equal level. Many wrestlers will train at a heavier body weight than their normal weight division limit. And then, before a competition, they will undergo often dramatic losses in weight to make the limit. Referred to as weight cutting, it is achieved by depriving the body of all liquids. Then, after the weigh-in, they will replenish the liquids before competing. To achieve success in amateur wrestling, the athlete must excel in 3 main areas. First, there are certain physical qualities and skills that are essential to the sport. Brute strength, though an obvious asset, is by itself not nearly enough. Speed, agility, endurance, and balance are all essential ingredients. But there is one very important physical element that would seem more appropriate for ballet dancers or gymnasts rather than wrestlers, It is called flexibility and is loosely defined as the ability to move the various parts of the body through their maximum range. A high degree of flexibility increases the wrestler's ability to resist his opponent's attacks as well as initiate his own. One of Clark Davis's many assets is his flexibility. His opponent has his left leg at an extreme angle, and yet Davis is able to continue as though he feels nothing at all. However, important as these physical factors are, wrestling champions are ultimately decided by their psychological strength. It is in this area that wrestling shares a common ground with most other sports, for the key attributes of any champion are desire, dedication, courage, and intelligence. We'll return in a moment with more action from the 1983 Canadian Wrestling Championships. From virtually all other sports in a dramatic way that goes all the way back to the very origin of man and his constant battle for survival. In most forms of competitive sport, winners are decided by the number of baskets, goals, touchdowns, faster times, greater distances. However, in amateur wrestling, you must confront your opponent without any equipment, protective clothing, or teammates. Just two men in direct combat. The wrestler must often make split-second decisions while in the heat of physical combat, often pressed for time, exhausted, and in a position of great discomfort. He who hesitates is lost. A split second of indecision and your opponent may capture you. Another important psychological quality is mental toughness, the ability to withstand pain. The scoring system in wrestling reflects its ancient roots. Points are awarded for varying degrees of control or capture. The ultimate form of control is pinning your opponent's back, if only for an instant, symbolic of the vulnerable stomach being exposed for the kill. Though it doesn't happen often, a pin will end a match immediately. Normally, a match consists of 2 3-minute periods with a 1-minute rest in between. The wrestler with the most points at the end of the match is declared the winner. However, if one wrestler attains a lead of 12 points during the match, he is considered to have clearly demonstrated technical superiority over his opponent and is immediately declared the winner. After the pin, the next highest form of control is worth 4 points. From a standing position, the wrestler must throw his opponent directly onto his back in a motion that forces his feet over his head. A typical three-point control maneuver also starts from a standing position, and his opponent's feet must again come off the mat, but not over the head. points can usually be gained by exposing your opponents back to the mat.